Today, May 10th, 2025, it is the 13th anniversary of a major thing happening that most Americans don't know a thing about. 13 years ago today, Rep. Thornberry of Texas, representing Austin, where a lot of propagandists have moved to, from Joe Rogan to Alex Jones to Elon Musk. But 13 years ago today, Rep. Thornberry introduced the update to the Smith-Mundt Act. And the Smith-Mundt Act was created in 1948 by Harry Truman, then the president. It was signed into law January 27, 1948. At that time, it was created for the aftermath of the World Wars and fighting the rise of communism, supposedly. In 1948, it was about the U.S. government creating propaganda to disseminate to foreign nations to help them fight communism. That's how it began. And in 2012, the update was proposed by Thornberry, and it was signed into law the next year by Obama, July 2nd, 2013. But the update was so that propaganda could be disseminated in the United States to control public opinion for the sake of government purpose, federal government purpose. And, since that time, we've seen just a rapid rise in psychological operations in the news, especially those that are focused on race and keeping people divided amongst race. Right now at this moment, people are losing their mind online over the Shiloh Hendrix story and how much money she's raised for supposedly calling a 5-year-old boy the N-word in Minnesota 5 years after what happened to George Floyd in the same state. And all kinds of contents being made about that in comparison to Karmelo Anthony, who supposedly stabbed a white student as a young black man. And he just happened to do it on the same day that basketball star Karmelo Anthony was nominated to the Hall of Fame. I want to go over this. And again, I want people to understand the ritualism of what is taking place and why these things happen on the dates they do. Last night, there was a panel where people were losing their mind over these things, and also talking about the Cincinnati story of the police who killed reportedly a young man, and then his father retaliated by killing the police. And now that same man's up for 2 murder charges, even though he reportedly killed 1 person. One of the latest headlines in this psychological operation. The reason he's up for the murder charge of 2 people, even though he killed 1 person reportedly, is because that person was a person and a police officer. So that makes him count as 2 people. Talk about a tribute to authority. But yes, these are psychological operations, and people need to wake up. People need to wake up. I went on this panel last night and introduced them to News by the Numbers, and overwhelmingly the response on that panel was that I was mentally ill. And it just makes me laugh because this is the same thing that happened after September 11th. I saw through the media lies, I saw through the propaganda, and almost everybody around me in my peer group said, sounds like you might have some kind of mental illness if you're questioning the news. Years ago, decades ago, when people would question authority, they would be accused of being mentally ill, and they would get lobotomies. They'd have procedures performed on their brain to make them more compliant with authority. I'd say, honestly, if you're someone who is accused of mental illness because you see through the lies, I'd wear that as a badge of honor. The true mental illness is in these ignorant people that worship authority, swallow the lies they're fed every day, the obvious bullshit. That's the real mental deficiency. It might not be illness, but it's deficiency. And it is some kind of mass cultural programming. It is some kind of mass cult where everybody has the same systemic responses. Oh my God, you don't believe the authorities? You're mentally ill. And these are the people swallowing the lies from government where it pumps propaganda to you all day. And it should be known because it's the laws on the books, and it has been now for more than a decade. Remember, we got the first black president, and then all of a sudden the news was full of black versus white racial psyops, and nobody caught on. The same people who think pointing these things out are mental illness are the same people who don't catch on to the obvious propaganda. They're the same people who don't catch on to the obvious psyops like Obama even being elected president after a decade of fear-mongering with Osama. Barack Hussein Obama after a decade of Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. These are really dumb people. Really dumb people don't know anything about anything, but they just believe all the liars on TV, and they have no idea about things like the Smith-Mundt Act. So let's go over to the ritualism here. For the people who think knowing about these kind of things is some kind of mental problem. Again, Smith-Mundt Act, signed into law by 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason and 33rd President Harry S. Truman on January 27th, 1948. Date might look familiar. Did we recently have a video released of police beating a black man on January 27th, only for them to be acquitted the other day on the 127th day of the year? Talking about Tyree Nichols, whose funeral was in the Masonic Temple where MLK gave his last speech. Well, let's go over this. Smith-Mundt Act, signed into law by a Freemason at the start of 48. And this law was so that the government could legally disseminate propaganda. Again, Freemasonry is based in Kabbalah. Within Kabbalah, there's a belief that God created the world with letters, numbers, and words. Within Kabbalah, there's a practice of coding numbers into words. This practice is thousands of years old. It's amazing how when you educate people about this who have no idea about this because it wasn't part of their slave school upbringing where they pledged to 13 stripes for 13 years, they automatically think it couldn't be true. So many people in their little brains, they think if it mattered, they would have learned it in slave school. Again, people like my sister, this comes out of her mouth all the time. Zach, this couldn't mean anything because if it did, they would have taught us. They would have taught us this in school. A lot of people think just like my sister, these are lower functioning people. And I don't mean to be mean to my sister or anyone else, but it's just true. If you have thoughts like that they'd only teach you what matters, you're kind of a moron. You kind of don't know anything about anything. There's a reason, again, you were given a First and Second Amendment. It was to protect yourself from enemies, foreign and domestic. What if those domestic enemies have been controlling your government for a long time and they've purposely made schools that keep you dumb so you don't reach your potential and you're easily controlled? You're easily turned into a consumer bot where your only real purpose is to raise funds for the people who control the government and corporations. People who know nothing about nothing. Yesterday, I saw a woman driving by while I was walking my child. Looked like she weighed more than the car. She was barely fitting in. Her arms were hanging out. Looked like her arm weighed more than my whole wife. And she had this huge double scoop ice cream cone. I just thought, my God, that should be illegal. That should be illegal. I bet I'm going to be paying her medical bills if I'm already not paying them with my tax dollars. This is America right now. Really dumb people, no knowledge about anything. I mean, would an intelligent person who's on the verge of dying from obesity and diabetes, would they be driving down the street with a double scoop ice cream cone? No. But did she learn anything in her 13 years of slave school about health, nutrition? No, she didn't. She's one of these useful idiots that are walking the streets everywhere. That's what this nation's full of, useful idiots. No common sense, no intelligence, no knowledge about anything, don't know a lick about history. They're set up for all the quotes, including those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. But yeah, right here. People think showing this kind of stuff is mental illness, that the Smith-Mundt Act passed in 48 to disseminate propaganda, and it just happens to equal propaganda. And for the person to be like, well, do you have any examples since 1948? Yeah, I put them out every day on this channel. This is what your federal government does every day. And for anyone out there like, well, what about the word Illuminati? I thought that was a hoax from Hollywood. No, it's a historical fact. The Illuminati was created May 1st, 1776 by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt. One of its core missions was to infiltrate Freemasonry. So again, who signed the Smith-Mundt Act? The 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president. And where's 33 and 48 meet? Take the divisors of the number 33. 1, 3, 11, 33. Add it together. The divisors of 33 add to 48. For the record, when you run the alphabetic order in reverse, Freemason's 48. For anyone looking up here and can't figure out how these numerical values are tabulated, it's the alphabetic order with numerology applied. S is the 19th letter. The numerology of 19 is 1 plus 9 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1, so S breaks down to 1. M, the 13th letter, becomes 1 plus 3 is 4, so M is 4. I is the 9th letter. T is the 20th. 2 plus 0 is 2. H is the 8th, so on. You just take the alphabetic order, apply numerology, add up the word. First letter in propaganda is P, the 16th letter. 1 plus 6 is 7, so on. Very simple. Another cipher is just doing the exact same thing in reverse, running the alphabetic order in reverse with numerology. Funny enough, Freemason is 48 in that cipher. One of the first goals of the Illuminati was to infiltrate Freemasonry. George Washington has a letter about this in the National Archives. His concerns about Freemasonry being infiltrated by the Illuminati. The first recognized president, also a Freemason, just like many of the founders were Masons, which is based in Kabbalah, where this whole thing of letters and numbers comes from. Truman became a Mason in 1909. He became a 33rd degree Freemason in 45. He became the 33rd president in 45. In this code, Masonry, secrecy, order, federal, race war, police, they all equal 33. And remember, the police are Masonic largely, and almost every town in America, the police station's right next to the Masonic Lodge, small and big. The Fraternal Order of Police is Masonic. We're going to come back to the race war piece again. I've been talking about this since I started here. My earliest videos were focused on how 33 was encoded in all of these racially divisive psychological operations. And also, one of my earliest videos was exactly about the Smith-Mundt Act, which was a newer thing back when I started in 2013. And I was talking then about that and how the U.S. Army Field Manual, Section 33-1, is about psychological operations, psyops, things meant to influence the minds of people for the sake of government and military ventures. 33 is constantly encoded in these psyops, and we're going to go over that again in a second. We just saw the Tyree Nichols officer killing, or the officers accused of killing Tyree Nichols acquitted 33 days after MLK's death anniversary in Memphis, when, again, his funeral was in the same Masonic temple that MLK gave his last speech in. MLK's family is Boulay, a Masonic offshoot. But yeah, again, about Truman signing this bill on January 27th, making it law, 127. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 127. We just talked about this with the video of Tyree Nichols getting beaten, releasing on January 27th, and the officers getting acquitted on the 127th day of the year, May 7th. 57. Scottish Rite alone's 57. Bavarian Illuminati is also 127. 127th the 31st prime. You just saw the war begin with India and Pakistan, where this morning they're saying there's a ceasefire. But what did they report to you on the day the war began on the 127th day of the year? They said 31 people were killed. News by the numbers all day, every day. How about the name Thornberry? Thornberry's the rep who wrote the amendment to this bill, making it so that it could be used for domestic propaganda. What are the odds that Thornberry would have this same numerical value? And again, if you're new here, this is what we're showing, how day after day, how the rituals are perfect, how they pay tribute to these secret societies. The Illuminati founded by the Jesuit, which infiltrated Freemasonry, and of course, Freemasonry itself. This nation's capital is the Jesuit Masonic city, D.C. Do you remember how when the buildings came down 33 years after construction began in New York, it was buildings 1, 2, and 7, and they compared it to Pearl Harbor, which happened on December 7th, which also got us in a long, costly war. Do you remember how they called it Ground Zero, which equals 127, and that terminology came out of the Manhattan Project, like those big buildings that came down on 9/11 were in Manhattan? This stuff gets used again and again together. 33 years after 68. When World Trade Center construction began, George W. Bush got out of Yale, Skull and Bones modeled after the Illuminati. 33 years after 911 was made the National Emergency Dialing Code. Again, all those things happened in 68. World Trade Center construction, 911, Bush, a lot more. Boeing debuting their jumbo jetliners. Boeing also founded by a Skull and Bones member. All the planes on 9/11, Boeing. How to Seattle, just like the designer of the World Trade Centers, who was a Japanese American. Japan, Pearl Harbor, kamikazes, put it together. It's all in your face. Hawaii, one of 333 states. But okay, the update to make this bill eligible for domestic propaganda by the feds, that happened on the 10th of May. Can be written 10/5, 105. Masonry is 105. These are the 4 base ciphers if you're new here. The alphabetic order, the reverse alphabetic order, both orders with numerology applied. Masonry 105. What a day for an update. 33 with Truman. 84 like United States of America, like Jesuit, like the Jesuit order. Again, this 84 number is huge. Remember, the Catholic Church and the federal government had diplomatic relations since 1984, the Orwellian year. Again, Jesuit 84, the Jesuit Order 84, the Catholic Church 84, United States of America 84, Masonry 84. These things all go together like a glove. Anybody out there like, no, Catholic Church, you can't be a Mason. Yeah, that's for you people that put money in the plate. Not for the people who take your money, who do Masonic rituals in front of your face every day, like the last Pope, Pope Francis, who was said to be a Mason, who always did the hidden hand, a Masonic pose. These cardinals who take an oath of secrecy before doing their ritual to elect the next pope. And by the way, first American pope, told you guys in advance it was going to have something to do with Philadelphia. The 267th was going to have to do something with the 267 area code. Sure enough, he went to school at Villanova outside of Philly. If you missed all that, check it out. But again, Pope Leo XIV, 58. First American pope on 5'8". Freemasonry, Rosicrucians, Solomon's Temple, Secret Society, all equal 58. Going back to the day that Truman signed the bill, January 27th, that date can be written 27/1, like 271, the 58th prime. Remember, the first degree of Freemasonry is the honored apprentice. Trump the apprentice won the 58th election after announcing from the 58-story Trump Tower. Anyway, just going through these. Masonry 39, when Truman signed the Smith-Mundt Act, that was 39 years after he became a Mason. And federal equals 33 and 39 in the same ciphers. He's the face of the federal government, signing the bill so that they can disseminate the propaganda. All right, so anyway, here we are now. It's 2025. It's like the 5,000th racial psyop, but on so many people's mind is they're just outraged at how this woman can call a 5-year-old boy 5 years after George Floyd in the same state the N-word, and how she can raise upwards of $1 million on social media because people like what she did. This 5-year-old boy was looking through her purse. So she went over and said, "Listen, you little N." And then some man captured that on video and tried to shame her. And people said, "Oh no, how dare you shame this white woman? She had the right to call that boy a little N-word." Good for her for raising $1 million. Again, seriously, guys, in what world does this story make sense? Like what person is honestly impressed by any woman calling a 5-year-old the N-word? Yeah, okay. Maybe the 5-year-old, again, the whole thing is a made-up psyop, which we're about to go over, but really, like, where would money like this ever be raised? Oh, Zach, have you read the stories? It's from white supremacist camps are raising the money. Who's really behind these white supremacist camps? Because, like, KKK, the KKK, K plus K plus K is 11 plus 11 plus 11, 33. A lot of people know that historically the KKK and the white sheets were usually the law enforcement, the sheriff in town. It's like police equals 33. How they put 33 on all these psyops. Who's really behind these white supremacist networks at the end of the day? You start to look at the encoding, they're very Masonic. A lot, just like a lot of gangs are Masonic. Bloods and Crips started with Masonic origins. So many gangs. I don't want to get into it. But anyway, on a Minnesota playground for a nation full of children, this story is just perfect. But yeah, this is now being compared to the supposed stabbing by Karmelo Anthony on the day that Karmelo Anthony got nominated to the Hall of Fame. The man who captured this video of Shiloh Hendrix. Again, if you're new here, I've been working on my 201 book for 5 years, and I should have put it out practically 5 years ago. Should have just put out a bunch of editions. There's been 5 million more 201s to add to it since I started working on it. But remember, the whole George Floyd was a massive 201 psychological operation. If you're new here, 201 is, you could argue, the pinnacle number of this study. It is the number of the Illuminati. It is the number of the Jesuits. It's important to Freemasonry. It's like the Oklahoma City Federal Building was demolished by a CIA agent, Timothy McVeigh, whose name equals 201, who's a partner, Terry Lynn Nichols equals 201, who were arrested in a Mercury Marquis 201, on and on and on. But if you go to the Oklahoma City site, there's a Masonic lodge that was damaged from the explosion, and there's a plaque on the building saying that it sold for $201,000 after the explosion. Not an accident. Again, this 201 number is so important to the cabal. The Jesuits who founded the Illuminati. Remember, the Illuminati was founded in the time of their suppression. The Jesuits were created 201 months after the 95 Theses was penned by Martin Luther. It has to do with why Martin Luther King Jr. was killed on the 95th day of the year, and the nation's first gun control legislation came 201 days later. The Jesuit order was preserved by Catherine the Great with 201 Jesuit priests. The first Jesuit pope was Francis, the first to live in Suite 201 at the Vatican, whose own name equaled 201, just like the Jesuit order equals 201, just like Order of Illuminati equals 201, just like the founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius of Loyola, equals 201. This 201 number, just massive. And again, with George Floyd, there were so many 201s on it. His baby mama, Roxy Washington, equals 201. The first man interviewed in Minnesota who got beat up by the same police, Lamar Ferguson, 201. Ferguson reminds you of Michael Brown, which popped off Black Lives Matter. Michael Brown equals 201. On and on and on. This 201 number's been all over these type of psyops. George Floyd was compared to a Gematria who was killed in Paris, France on the 201st day of the year, exactly 201 weeks earlier. But now we have this story drawing parallels to George Floyd, this white woman calling a 5-year-old the N-word 5 years after his killing, and it's all captured on video by Sharmaki Omar, or Sharmak Omar. I'm not sure how you say his name, but the spelling is right, and the 201 is there. And by the way, don't forget, again, Harriet Tubman equates to 201. That matters because they were going to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, but the Skull and Bones member, Steve Mnuchin, days before the George Floyd thing, said they're going to delay that for 8 years. Skull and Bones is also 201. It should remind you that Paul Walker, he was in the movie about Skull and Bones that came out 201 days after his birthday, right before the latest Skull and Bones member at the time got elected to the presidency, George W. Bush. And then George Walker, Paul Walker, George Herbert Walker. Paul Walker gets a red Porsche from Skull and Bones in that movie. Dies in a weird way in a red Porsche. 5 years to the day of George Herbert Walker Bush. And don't forget who told you George Herbert Walker Bush would not live past November 30th, 2018, and why he would die at 94 by no later than that day, only for him to die on that day. Again, told you that months in advance. I told you that the day that John McCain died. John McCain and Bush, who had so many parallels. Plane crashes in the war, supposedly. Republicans, propagandists, part of this cabal. If you guys weren't here, trust me, that was the best financial day of my life, because back then I got big views. A lot of people were locked into that prediction. I saw the power of what YouTube can do for people's wealth. I made over $10,000 that day off that prediction based on how many views that video got and how many ebooks I sold. $10,000 in a day. And honestly, you guys, that's the kind of money that should roll in every day for this work. YouTube has pretty much made it so it's been very hard for me to get views since that day, especially after Kobe died and what we exposed about that and how 201 that was. Kobe dead at 41, traveling from Catholic Mass on the Pope's 41st day of his age when his name equaled 41, and I wrote a book about that in 2017, Kobe and 41. Anyway, imagine that this work netted $10,000 every day, how many Gematria Effect News studios there were, and how much we'd be changing the world and changing people's minds. That's what they don't want. They want this work to seem small so people are hear about it first time like, oh, this sounds all like it gotta be a coincidence, mental illness. That would not be the case if we were large with huge views and everyone had to contend with our message every day. It'd be a different world. See how one man could change the world, but that's the problem in this big tech world where one man can be super censored and there's too many dummies to help pick up the slack. Not enough good people out there willing to do anything. Anyway, this whole story. Look how Minnesota Playground goes with Central Intelligence Agency. It's like when Oklahoma City blew up 243 days after Clinton's birthday. Again, Georgetown grad, just like how Governor of Oklahoma was a Georgetown grad. Keating and his brother put out the book, The Final Jihad, about a Timothy McVeigh blowing up the same building with explosives in the back of a moving truck. Funny how his brother, the brother of the governor, wrote a book about exactly what happened and had a McVeigh in the book. Tom McVeigh instead of Tim McVeigh. In that same book, terrorists hijack planes and fly them into skyscrapers in New York. All part of the script. But yeah, don't forget the words in the CIA's logo. Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America 201, just like their motto, the work of a nation, the center of intelligence 201. And don't forget, the CIA was founded September 18th, 47, on the 201st day of the Pope's age, when Catholic Pope equals 201, like the Jesuit order, and the Jesuits served the Pope. And Howard Hunt, one of the most famous CIA agents in history, said the greatest intelligence network in the world is the Jesuits. And again, the Jesuits and the Masons go hand in hand. Jesuit priests wrote a lot of the rites for Freemasonry. The 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite shares the motto Ad Merum Dei Gloriam with the Jesuits, for the greater glory of God. Trump, Jesuit educated, doing all the little Masonic rituals, paying tribute to all the Masonic Jesuit history, including King James the Mason, and how the Jesuits tried to blow him up on remember the 5th of November. King James, who died at 58. Trump wins the 58th election and then wins the 60th election on the anniversary of the Jesuits trying to blow up King James after the shooting hoax by the numbers. And another 33 ritual. Hello, Smith-Mundt Act. So, here, let's watch how this is what it looks like, guys. This is the Smith-Mundt Act in action right here. Let's watch how they cover it.
Did you call him the child? Did you call the child the word? It is my own business. You call him a Okay, why don't you have the boss to say it right now again? Okay. All right, that's what you say.
All right, so it's just that, and then, words on the screen with the propaganda.
She was gonna deny it and walk away. When there was a video and she saw that I was recording, she doubled down and
I want you guys to also pay attention how often in these big psyops the people involved are not Americans. Be like a mass shooting and they'll say 4 Chinese nationals were killed. It's like, that looks like it makes it easier to do the propaganda. Anybody know those 4 Chinese nationals? Oh, you don't? Who's this guy? Where's he from? Where's he from?
even triple down now.
Again, if you can't see what's going on, it's you with the mental problem. Thank you to the super chatters. Appreciate the generosity on this short stream. It's better than we normally do in a 5-hour stream. Shout out to Frank the Truth Tank, giving us hard-earned dollars. Frank the Truth Tank's pound of payment with us from Oklahoma City to New York, where we get out the word about this knowledge on the anniversaries of these dates. Shout out to Noble HSX. And Andre says, do I know who Gary the Numbers Goon is? Yeah. Again, it's sad that he's been promoted in the world. Gary the Numbers Goon used to call into my Wednesday radio show, trying to build up his own stock, and he'd get embarrassed. He'd call in with incorrect sports picks every week. We went toe-to-toe every Wednesday through the 2016 postseason, where I told everybody in spring training why the Cubs were a lock to win the World Series, and in the middle of the season why they were going to beat the Cleveland Indians in Game 7, which was a spot-on prediction. Gary called in every Wednesday, and he had to take every team in the postseason except for the winner. He was wrong on every series. And then when it was down to just Cubs-Indians, he guaranteed the Indians would win the World Series, which was just moronic because Major League equals 108. There's 108 double stitches on a baseball. Of course, the Cubs were going to break the 108-year drought, where Chicago's tallest building is the tower that's 108 stories. And after Gary got it wrong he just struck out every time in the postseason. It was embarrassing. And that's even, we're only talking about the baseball postseason. Gary's horrible at what he does. He claims to be the Jordan to this. He's god-awful. This year he had the Ravens guaranteed to win the Super Bowl, didn't even make it to the Super Bowl. I'm sure Gary got the Derby wrong, the Masters, everything else, where we've been getting them all right. And notice, Gary's synced up with all these, Fed types now, the people that get all this promotion on YouTube. I have no idea how Gary got locked in with them. Gary gets to go to the White House. Donald Trump invites Gary to the White House. He's some kind of agent. But yeah, Gary's horrible at what he does. Has a track record of being god-awful and dead wrong every year where, you know, we smoke it almost every year, and somehow, some way, I've been destroyed. You know, back when Gary used to call in, his YouTube channel used to average about 50 views a video back in 2016. Got no views. Yours truly was getting a lot of views. Yours truly has continued to nail things exponentially, from elections to sports to news stories, showing how it's all rigged. Gary, in this time, has been talking about like everything's real and this numerology thing's just the way the universe works, just putting BS out up there. But Gary has climbed the ladder somehow. Gary's now the one getting all the views. Gary's the one, you know, what are these people called? Fresh and Fit, these things he goes on that promote him. Yeah, Gary's a total shill. Gary's a total piece of shit, too. When Gary got smoked on the World Series, what he did, like a typical ooish little punk, is he launched a website called Gematria Fraud with my face on it. It's like, I'm the fraud. My prediction just landed. I just help people get paid. You had to take how many mulligans in the postseason and couldn't get it right even when it was down to 2 teams? And I'm the fraud? So, again, he reminds why his people have been kicked out of so many countries. But yeah, total scumbag is Gary. You almost gave him 100 for a reading. See, that's the power of suggestion, right? You see that he's getting views. All these shill agents, these propagandist types are promoting his name. Yeah, he's not worth giving $1 to. He's a complete moron and scam artist. And look at him. He can hardly write a sentence. He's an embarrassment to the ooish race who claim to have the highest IQs. Gary probably writes at about a 3rd grade level. Maybe not even 3rd grade. I mean, if you've ever seen Gary's tweets, it's like, Jesus. God, time to go back to kindergarten, buddy. But no, he's a total fraud of a human being. And by the way, he had something to do with my Twitter getting taken down too, because I challenged him to a debate, and then he was bragging on Twitter and on his own YouTube channel about getting my Twitter deleted. For people who don't know, my Twitter was deleted on speaking of January 27th, my Twitter was deleted on January 27th this year. And Gary took great pride in that and said it was him. And then he said, I told you the year of the snake was going to get you. And it's like, how does that even make sense? The year of the snake hasn't started yet. It starts in 2 days. Yeah, Gary's a moron. And again, somehow, some way connected enough to get my YouTube, or not my YouTube, but my Twitter deleted for challenging him to a debate. So, and it's too bad because I was getting views on Twitter. And again, Twitter stole my money. I paid for the whole year subscription. I got to use it for 2 months. And then, yeah, I was getting, in my live streams on Twitter, I was getting over 2,000 people per stream in there for the live stream. So that hurt to get that deleted. And then Twitter wrote back that I'm not allowed to have another Twitter profile. I have created a small one, but I haven't verified it because I'm pretty sure if I verified, it's going to get deleted because they wrote an explicit letter saying I'm no longer welcome on the Twitter, or now it's X platform. Anyway, yeah, he's a goon. All right, thank you again, Leslie. You're always very generous as well. We'll leave it there for now. I got to do the Patreon live stream. If you're not on Patreon, we'll be talking sports on Patreon in just a minute. Until next time, Truth Seeker.